Hi, welcome to this book review of Gather the Daughters by Jennie Melamed. This book was published in July 2017. I read it a couple of weeks ago in August, really enjoyed it and wanted to share my thoughts. So here goes. First, I wanted to tell you a bit about the author because I think that sets up the context of this book really nicely and you'll know straight away if you're into it or not. So this author is a psychiatric nurse. She specializes in children who have had pretty traumatic pasts, usually child abuse, sexual abuse, or any kind of mental abuse. She definitely explores these themes in her book, so if you're not comfortable with reading any of these things, then probably give this one a miss. If it is something that does interest you, I'm going to tell you a little bit more. So this book takes place on an island off the coast of America. It's essentially a cult. In this perfect society, girls basically submit themselves to men and are very subservient, and you get this kind of old-timey kind of vibes of it. The island is self-sufficient for the most part, and the men are given the roles of actually providing and doing all the things. The women are basically there just to like have sex with, cook, and make babies. That seems to be their primary function. This society has a pretty nasty dark secret. This isn't a spoiler, but it's something that isn't overtly mentioned in the books. There are clues about it pretty early on, so I won't be giving too much away. But basically in this society, the fathers sleep with the daughters to show them the love and care that they will have once they get married. They are to stop sleeping with the child once they hit puberty, and then they're not allowed to be touched for that year until the next summer comes around, and then they have the summer of fruition, which is when the girl gets married off to someone. So this book takes place during the months of summer on this island, and you follow the perspective of 4 girls. So this particular time of the year is really interesting because it's one of the few times that the women are actually doing something. So you start off with the children. During the summertime, the children are allowed to have free reign of the island. They can go wherever they want, they do whatever they want. For the girls who have just had their period and are about to get married off, this is called the summer of fruition. And for the married women, this is the time of year where they're actually allowed to meet and talk to each other and have a bit more involvement with each other. So as I said, we follow the perspective of 4 girls. We have 2 girls who are still in the children phase. The next girl we follow is in her summer of fruition and early marriage life. The last girl we follow is the oldest girl. She is starving herself to prevent her period from happening so she doesn't have to get married. I quite enjoyed this book. I thought it was a really gripping read. I felt like you really wanted to find out what happens next. You wanted to see how this society works, and you really wanted to work out how it all sort of fit together and resolved in the end. I think that the author did a really good job of examining some really heavy topics. I thought the writing style was immersive. The author didn't kind of show her face too much, which was great. And overall I thought this was a pretty solid first book for an author. In terms of the characters, I didn't mind so much the multiple perspectives, kind of getting a bit tired of that trope, but I think in this book the way it's structured worked out pretty well, and you end up seeing a lot more of some characters than others. In terms of setting, I felt that the island was a real place. You kind of felt how oppressive the environment was and how isolated they were. In terms of pacing and plot, I thought that there was pockets of kind of downtime, but otherwise pacing was pretty good. I always wanted to read the next chapter to find out what happened next. At no point was I like, oh well, I'm not really invested, I don't really want to know what happens. Whilst this book was a really easy read in terms of writing style, the concepts behind it are not easy to swallow at all. And I think if you're not into that, then probably give this one a miss because it's pretty heavy. It's pretty heavy. There are a couple of things that I wasn't so fussed about on this book. The first one being that the 2 younger characters, their voices were really similar and it was hard to kind of tell them apart sometimes. Something that was hinted at in the book was the relationship between the mother and the son, and it wasn't necessarily explored, and I kind of wish it was. It feels really weird to say because it's not a very nice topic and you don't necessarily want to read it. I'm curious to know how they justified it. All the men in this society have a pretty particular view on relationships, and I was curious to see is that something that the mother kind of brings to it, or is it something that they watch the father doing? Where does that come from? Having said that, the book does cover quite enough. so I can understand why that wasn't necessarily explored a bit more. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I think it explores one concept really, really well. If you're a dystopian fan, if you're interested in seeing what a patriarchal society to the extreme is, then I'd consider picking this book up. So that's my review of Gather the Daughters by Jennie Melamed. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was insightful. I'm curious to know if you're considering picking it up. If you have already, if you've read it, what did you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. I haven't heard much talk about this book, so I am ready and raring to go. Let's talk about it. Okay, bye.